I want to talk about ayahuasca. You don't hear that too often, right? Maybe you do. Who knows who you hang out with? But anyway, ayahuasca has made a huge impact on my life. And I get asked all the time by people who know that, I've been through ceremony and I participated. Well, Dom, ayahuasca was really the solution, right? Like that was the thing that changed, because I keep getting asked, Dom, what changed? Like what changed? And the immediate reaction is, oh, he went to Costa Rica and he did ayahuasca and that changed him. And then he's good. And so there's this magic medicine and all you need to do is just go into ceremony and do that. And there's some truth in the fact that ayahuasca was a major catalyst in the change for me. But it was not enough. And it was not a magic bullet. In no way is ayahuasca a magic bullet. And should it ever be treated like some magic healer, some solution that's going to change your life. Otherwise, you're going to end up jumping from ceremony to ceremony, and it just becomes another mechanism of distraction, another mechanism of escape. After that ceremony, that beautiful first experience where I had my very first real encounter with what I would refer to as source or God, and I'm not going to get into all of that now. I will in another video because it's an interesting topic, but this is not a religious video. I'm not a religious person. I don't know why I always feel the need to caveat that, but I grew up in a place called Colorado Springs, Colorado, where everybody is such a not everybody, but the right-wing Christian movement out there is very strong, and I'm not into that. So, coming back to the main topic, that was my first real experience with what I would refer to as source or God. And it showed up in a really big way for me. And my higher self, which I didn't really understand or know that I had, was right there and showing me that it was there for me too. After that, I left that experience the next day thinking, I am solved. I am healed. I am an infinite, powerful being. I can never drink again. Within a few weeks, I was drinking. And then the drinking became harder. It became harder because now I knew. Now I actually knew what I was doing, not just to myself, but to my higher self. And I knew that myself, as this human being, was not just a human being, but that I was here for a reason. And that drinking was distracting me from that reason, from that purpose. And so then the question really became, well, how do I quit? How do I get this out of my life? Like one would think that once you have that knowledge, once you have that understanding that this is getting in the way, you would no longer use it. But it's not that easy, because the logical mind doesn't control how we handle our emotions and our habits and things like that. And so there was a slew of work that had to happen in order for me to get alcohol out of my life post ayahuasca. And it was really important for me to get alcohol out of my life before another ceremony. And so it was many months before I went into another ceremony because quite frankly, I didn't want to reckon with that world, that realm, with knowing what I know and coming back still a victim of my environment. And so I didn't have a solution. I didn't know how to solve my drinking problem, because my drinking problem was not one that took away from my career. It was not one that got me into legal trouble. It was not one that really many people would look at and think it was a drinking problem. They just thought, Dom likes to drink. He's a big boy. He likes to have fun. And too often we just kind of think that. But for me, I knew it was a problem. I knew that it was taking away from my life. At 275 pounds, at having almost, on my way to having an A1C trajectory to getting potential diabetes, having dangerously high blood pressure, smoking cigarettes all the time, constantly getting bronchitis. This is gross, making irresponsible sexual decisions. This is all on video. This is kind of embarrassing. But if you're in this position, you get it, right? And poor people in the park listening to this. No, hopefully they're not listening, or maybe it will help. And so it wasn't really until I understood manifestation that I was able to stop drinking. And I don't know if manifestation is a very common practice for connecting with self and getting away from a substance, but it should be. And that's really one of the major intents of the Daily Growth Map, which, by the way, is totally free. I'm not here trying to sell people on something. There is a paid program if you want to join it and you want to go deeper, but this is totally free. Everything I'm talking about here is available for free, as it should be. And the manifestation practice that really got me away from alcohol, that really saved my life, was getting in touch with my feelings. It was that simple. And I had never really focused on my feelings. In fact, I was drinking to avoid my feelings and I wasn't aware of that. And it wasn't until one morning that I woke up and I realized that the reason I drank while I was drinking, I was sitting in bed drinking a beer, and I realized that the reason I drink is to control my feelings, either to run away from them or to enhance them and kind of hit this momentary bliss, right? Now, I realized during that, well, when I drink, my feelings are all over the place. Like, they're confused as fuck. One minute I'm angry, one minute I'm daydreaming. And I would also realize that lots of times I'm using it to slow my mind down and kind of daydream because I'm so fucking uptight all the time. I'm so anxious about money or success or what somebody thinks of me, or worse, what I think somebody thinks of me, right? Projecting what they think on me. And so alcohol was a way of getting out of that. And so then I just kind of laughed out loud because I realized that if my feelings are confused, that means my subconscious is confused. And if my subconscious is confused, that means my reality is confused. And therefore, I cannot drink because I'm not in control of my feelings. Now, I was able to connect those dots because about 4 to 5 months earlier, I had read this little book called Feeling is the Secret, which basically taught me the recipe of manifestation. And when I first read it, I thought, well, this is bullshit. Like, there's no way this works. You feel something before you go to bed, and then your reality changes. But the way he wrote it, the conviction in his prose, the Neville Goddard, it just, something stood out, and I said, I'll try it. And the very first thing he says in his book is, I'm not gonna even prove this to you. You just gotta try it and believe it. And so I took that challenge, right? And every night I drew little boxes, and he didn't explain how to do this. He just said, feel, and your life will change. And I drew little boxes of like, what did I want? What would my identity need to be, and how would it feel? And then I would close my eyes and I would use my imagination, and then I would try and recall my dreams in the morning and try and get in touch with like if that feeling showed up, and then figure out the actions. And I started doing this and it started working, but it didn't work when I was drinking. And that was another thing, is I realized that the drinking was taking away from that. And that's what I mean by this like confused subconscious, because what you really want to do is you really want to program your subconscious. And ultimately what I ended up doing that night after I figured out this after this epiphany happened, was I manifested sobriety. And I did that by going to bed and imagining the feeling of no longer needing alcohol in my life. And I did it after really a day of drinking. I decided I was going to still try it. And that night I woke up and I was violently coughing. I don't know where it came from. And I just said out loud, I quit, I'm done, no more. And I've never had a drink ever since. And so really my spiritual belief is manifestation. Like my spiritual practice is manifestation. And that gets me closer and closer to my higher self, because I'm able to channel whatever it is that my higher self wants, whatever my higher self came here to do, whatever the chosen path is. By connecting to manifestation in this practice, I get closer and closer to it, and alcohol gets in the way of that. And so when people ask me, did ayahuasca solve my drinking problem? No. Ayahuasca did not solve my drinking problem, but ayahuasca did teach me what I did not know I had inside me, which is this wild spiritual power. And I refer to that as human power because we chose to be here manifested as humans. And once I knew that, and if you pair that with finding a way to get in touch with that on a regular basis, which for me is this nightly manifestation practice, then I was able to quit drinking. Hopefully that's helpful. And if you want to use the daily growth map for this or for manifesting anything else, give it a try. dailygrowthmap.com. It's just a simple sheet that you can download, and you can incorporate this along with the video tutorials in your life. And I would love to hear how this works for you. And remember that these things don't happen overnight, but remember that they can happen, and that believing in yourself is really a precursor to being able to have these feelings and the imagination of knowing that this can happen. And those feelings and that imagination are a precursor to your belief. So it all works together. See you around.